You're listening to This Osteopathic Life. This is Dr. Amelia Bueche. I'm honored to share with you conversations for the health of all things. In these special episodes, I am joined by guests on the show to explore how the osteopathic concept presents in their lives and learn about their personal and professional stories. Ranging from osteopathic physicians to those familiar with osteopathic treatment to those associated with osteopathic medicine in a variety of settings, these conversations provide new perspective on lighting the way for the path to best health. Please note that while I am a physician and may interview other physicians, this podcast is intended to share general information and encourage discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content provided in this podcast and in any linked materials is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice. Welcome to This Osteopathic Life. This is Dr. Amelia Bueche, here with more conversations for the health of all things. And today I'm joined by Dr. Christopher Liu, who supports health through financial freedom and helping physicians live their best life. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's so great to have you.
Thanks, Amelia. I'm really happy to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'd love for you to tell our audience more about your story in medicine. How did you get started and how did that lead you to where you are now?
Sure. So I grew up in Houston and grew up in very humble circumstances. I was always the outsider, always got picked on. So I developed a very entrepreneurial skill set. So back then, the keys towards financial freedom and financial independence when I was growing up was to go to medical school or law school, finance, to get a high-paying job. So I followed that traditional saying for a long period of my life. But it was really my true passions and my true interests were in business and entrepreneurship. So I went to Baylor for medical school. I was part of the MD PhD program. And, back then, Baylor and Rice, where I got my PhD, was a really entrepreneurial place where there was a lot of biotech startups, a lot of nanotechnology startups. I got my PhD in nanotechnology. So that's when I started two companies. One was investing in stocks and trading options. And so by my second year of medical school and finally by my last year of medical school, I was able to generate a full-time income without needing to work for anybody or without needing a job. So, and then what I did was I poured those earnings back into real estate, into cash flowing investments. So nevertheless, a lot of my mentors and my colleagues and professors advocated for me to go the traditional route and to have a backup plan in case anything fell through. So, I pursued the high-paying specialties, orthopedic surgery, and really, I knew once when I matched, it wasn't really my passion. So, but I did for 2 years, and then eventually by 2008, when the financial crisis hit, that was my opportunity because real estate deals were on fire sale. There were a lot of discounts and a lot of different opportunities. So basically, I had that skill set. So I poured the next 8 years into investing in single-family condominiums, residences, and by my mid-30s, I had achieved a level of financial freedom and independence where I could pretty much do whatever I wanted. So that's when I took a year off, and I started my consulting company. So now I'm a digital content creator. I consult with hospitals in their healthcare IT and their computer records implementation. And then I do a lot of executive coaching, speaking, and I'm also an advisor for a healthcare startup, as well as do a lot of client coaching. So, and I'm happy to take any questions from there. Yeah,
that's such a great story, and so interesting to hear that you had these two kind of diverging paths, and you seem to have brought them back together. So you had this MD PhD, so they started from that same space, and then you really pursued the business arm, but you took the time to come back, or maybe you were always within health. Do you see that you've really been in healthcare the whole time, just maybe in a different way than you might have envisioned when starting that doctor route?
Yeah. So like I tell all my clients, the skills sets that I learned to get into medical school, to graduate from medical school, get into residency. Those are all skill sets needed to for high achievers and to go into to make high impact. So I take all those skills and apply it into my entrepreneurial ventures, into my business. Mm-hmm. It's also like you mentioned, it's also a divergent path where you're basically serving the same cohort, but you're just focusing on a different niche. So, going through medical school and going through graduate school and through the whole residency process has really allowed me to connect with physicians and for the healthcare professionals and be able to really relate to their stories and to their situations and to be able to help them.
And do you remember for you some of those most challenging points in your journey and where that has led you to intervene? So whatever those trickiest parts, either staying on the path when you knew it wasn't right for you, or just that process of applying for a high pressure, highly competitive residency. What are some of those pressure points and how have you helped others address those?
Yeah. So the first pressure point is just actually listening to the traditional advice and getting on the traditional path. So that's the first thing. So where I intervene or where I understand is I understand that clients, one is I help clients get clarity about what are their goals, values, beliefs. I also help them get context into where are they at, both mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially. And then from there, before you make any decision on what path to take, you have your options. What are your particular talents? What are your particular predispositions, your particular skill sets? And from there, we craft a plan as to what is the best approach and what is the best strategy so that you can ultimately achieve your goals and values that you want out of life, whether that's financial freedom, whether that's building a family, building a business, building a career. We all have different needs and wants. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. So I really understand that, the mindset of social conditioning. Then the second part is there's a couple of different pivots from here. One is if they're interested in entrepreneurial ventures, starting your own company, I can intervene there. There's also a pathway where you can venture into not necessarily leaving medicine, but you can actually carve your own niche and pathway while still taking care of patients. So a lot of my clients opt for that aspect as well, where they still have the stability of a clinical income, but they are still doing things where they're making an impact, whether that's in teaching, research, administration, and so on and so forth. So, and then there's another cohort where you have to really, this is the hardest cohort because this is the segment where they know that they're on the wrong path, but it's hard to get off of it. So they're either they're trapped by fear, or they're trapped by student loan debt, or they're trapped by their particular situations and circumstances. So that's the hardest part, because that's when you have to really get them to take action. They know the best right action is to do something else, but they have to do a lot of planning and preparing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's so important to notice all of those and that you give some opportunity and almost maybe permission, right? Not that we need necessarily permission from someone else, but or demonstration that it's okay. It's okay to step off of that paved path and to create your own, and okay to stay on it. I think a lot of times when we talk about coaching with physicians, there's this concern, well, everybody's going to leave medicine, right? We need people to stay and, deliver direct patient care, but that both are possible, right? It's possible to find ways to stay successfully, and it's okay if it is time to depart. And you brought up in there, the mind, body, spirit aspect, which is so key and core to osteopathic philosophy. And what I'm hearing here is this financial health, and how that comes through, and it can really influence all of those. We can think about the stress of finances and how that shows up in our body, the feelings we have around it, all of the mental constructs, what we're thinking and how we're judging ourselves for where we are. What do you notice? And do you ever phrase it as financial health with your clients?
Yeah, I like that term financial health, because really the more financially healthy you are, the better off. There's a correlation. There's a recent study where examining a cohort of doctors where they looked at financial health, whether that's through income, passive sources, real estate, stocks. And the more options you have, the better off you are, both your career. So that gives you, because and the underlying factor was more options. So you don't feel trapped. You're not stuck by debt. And it also correlates into better relationships, better families, better marriages, better relationship with your kids, and better overall financial, mental, emotional health. So really, financial health is a good way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And it all begins with financial literacy, which we don't really learn in school. I think I had to learn everything on my own outside of school. Um, so I think really we have to start advocating and educating, the whole population about financial health, starting from early on all the way into our careers. A lot of society teaches us to just pursue high income professions and specialties, but just because you have a high income doesn't necessarily mean you're financially free and independent. You have to be able to take that income and translate it into residual passive income, so that as you age or as you progress later in your life, you have more time to do the things that you enjoy and that bring you fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. And in general, there can be this perception we're mentioning high paying careers that, oh, physicians are fine, right? They make enough money, or they have job security. And we're seeing that that's being proven untrue. We've seen a lot of job insecurity, especially in employed positions, particularly during the time of the pandemic. And also, I wonder how you do relate this maybe across spectrums, so for somebody who's listening that maybe isn't earning a high income, how this might still apply to them.
Yeah, it really comes down to four key things. So income is 25% of it. The other comes from expenses. So again, physicians, their stereotype is that we have the big house, the fancy cars, and the job security, stability. It's changing now because with student loans and with the way the financial system works, the way money works now. It's also changing in terms of societal constraints, in terms of marriages and families, the way we look at those highly touted beliefs. So all of that is changing. So really, it comes down to expenses. So that doesn't necessarily mean we have to, live cheaply or frugally. We can still, enjoy a nice, comfortable lifestyle, but we really have to watch our expenses and not let them get out of hand. So that's one thing. And because of all these different factors and the ways everything's changing, we have to be more cognizant of just overall income and overall expenses. Taxes are going up, inflation's going up, the cost of living is going up, insurance, etc. The other thing is we have to know the differences between assets and liabilities. So I tell all my clients, anything that takes money out of you is a liability. So the highly touted idea of your house is an asset, in a way it is, in a way it isn't, because you still have to pay the property taxes, the mortgage, the insurance, anything breaks down. So, but a rental property can be an asset or a liability. So again, we have to know these differences. And the other idea is, just because you drive a fancy car doesn't necessarily mean you are financially free. That just means you have a liability on your hand. So those four key aspects we have to start learning about, start focusing on. So really, the way to financial freedom is the good thing about physicians is that they have a lot of income, which can then be translated into decreasing your expenses, decreasing your taxes. You can put them more into assets, cash producing assets, to produce more passive income, to free up your time. And then you also decrease your overall consumptive liability. So it's okay to use a debt to acquire assets and things such as that nature. So, all four of these components are key.
I'm curious, and for me, I know this personally, and there's a sense of altruism generally amongst physicians, how you align the work that you're doing in the building of assets and financial freedom toward, say, philanthropy or community involvement. Is there any direct corollary there? Is that an intentional place in the work that you do with clients? Do you see that emerge? And I love that you've given references. So maybe, are there any resources that would support that? Maybe it's anecdotes, maybe it's true resources that would say, when you do earn higher, you have the capacity to give in a different way.
Yeah, I like that question because really after my parents always told me to always, give back in some way, keep the flow going, keep the good karma going. So as a physician, once you've achieved a comfortable lifestyle, you have some disposable income, maybe you have some cash producing assets, maybe you're financially free, maybe you've, you retired early. So that's one goal. That's a very lofty goal that all of us aspire to and wish. And so once you have that, the next thing is, how are you going to, what's the next level of contribution, whether it's to your spouse, to your kids, your family, to your community, making an impact for other physicians, giving back in certain ways, either through monetary, through your time, mentoring, creating great information. So that sort of thing. But I think the next level beyond financial independence and early retirement is giving back and contributing. Either it doesn't have to be monetary. It can be through your time and your generosity and helping others. So those are all different ways. But I think, and also as physicians, because we're so altruistic, we can translate some of that altruism from patient and clinical care into promoting and leaving a legacy for the next generation as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm wondering, you mentioned, the tech startups and these creative places. How do you help physicians uncover ideas that might help directly, in the delivery of healthcare, or perhaps in new and surprising ways? There might be, sometimes I get the sense that physicians have suppressed some of their creativity as they've really adapted to a system and worked on finding right answers and following evidence-based medicine, which is also important. But how do you tap into that creative space? Because it sounds like I hear that in what you're doing yourself. And I wonder how that emerges for you with your clients.
Well, creativity is it's a very interesting subject, because we're all creative. It's not just confined to musicians and artists, but we all have creativity. So it's really up to us to channel it. So, and it's really interesting because physicians, we are a very interesting cohort because we are highly driven, highly intelligent, highly capable. So, but we also have to fit into the system of the insurance and the bureaucracy. So I think when we are forced to do that, we sort of lose a part of ourselves. We sort of disown that part of ourselves, that curiosity, that childlike manner. So we have to really channel that back. So I'll give you, for an example, one of my clients I coached, and so she didn't leave medicine, but she found joy in clinical care, but she also found joy in educating residents and medical students and teaching. So that's one way of sparking creativity. So you can do that. Another one went completely into research. So scientific research and clinical research, you have to be those are highly creative fields. And even though the income is less, I find that the physicians in academia enjoy a lot much more career satisfaction because they're giving a part of them and they're contributing and they're doing something more meaningful rather than just chasing a high income. The other cohort I have is the series of entrepreneurs who have gone out, off the well-beaten path, started their own companies, really pursued their own passion. So all three of those examples require creativity and require a lot of passion and a lot of ingenuity.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you mentioned that it's there, right? And it kind of gets stifled. And we talk about self-healing in osteopathic medicine, and it doesn't go away necessarily, right? It becomes dormant.
And through this process, working with you, perhaps achieving some financial freedom allows that space to open again. And they're almost healing that inner core of who they were. And it can still contribute to medicine. I love that the majority of those examples are still teaching or academia, research that's going to benefit health on a broader scale. And that becomes accessible. I think that's really encouraging. Mm-hmm. Another tenet I hear echoed in what you're talking about is the relationship of structure and function. And so you've given some really concrete examples and you've demonstrated, having a plan and can get you where you need to go. Do you see other ways structure shows up in your life that helps things actually to work better, to optimize your function?
Yeah. So I started out with, really it's, some of my mentors were like Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and Brendan Bouchard, all of these high influencers, Robin Sharma, the 5 a.m. Club. So all of these, there's a lot of a lot of books and a lot of content coming out, starting with the whole wellness and spirituality, and just starting out your day with a routine that puts you in a very resourceful and empowering mode in a state. So that whether that's waking up at 5 a.m. or meditating or going for a run or doing something, disconnecting from technology, not reacting to social media or emails, but one where you're consciously choosing how to start out your day. So, and it's different for everybody, but for me, it starts out with a cold plunge. It starts out with meditation, journaling, about an hour of reading, just an hour to 2 where you're focused on your own self and creating ideas and values, and so that you can tackle the day in a much more resourceful and much more abundant state, rather than being in a rush and reacting to the daily activities of life.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And setting the tone for your day and the intention can be so powerful. How do you deal with when obstacles do arise? There's lots of different philosophies around this, but we talk in osteopathic medicine about removing obstructions to health. And so when things come up, either expected or not, roadblocks, how do you find that? Do you have strategies in place to help you handle when things don't quite go as you might have planned?
Oh yeah, I used to really struggle with roadblocks and obstructions and just frustrations, and I used to almost derail it. For a long time. It derailed me, and there was just one point where it's just like it was happening every day, where I just told myself I have to develop strategies and tools in place to either prevent or to mitigate and manage them, so that it doesn't cause that sort of havoc and that or that negative spiral where it just ruins your day. Mm-hmm. So one is I've been working a lot is just on boundaries. So, saying no more often, and just creating more creating more intentions and being more intentional about how I use my time, what I think about, what I'm feeling, all my different perceptions. So that's one, is just boundaries. Whether that's, separating from distance or time or different strategies, creating boundaries. The other thing is meditation. So 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and 10 minutes at night. So I'm an introvert, so I get a lot of rejuvenation from being alone and introspecting and journaling and things like that. So that replenishes me. So meditation does. And then just changing the being conscious of your mind talk. So instead of thinking everything is about you or happening to you, think of it more as in terms of a more global, universal scale, and seeing that we're all part of one, and we're all together in this, and it's not about the ego, and it's not about beating another, or things such as competition and things such as that nature.
I think that's so important, and connection is so powerful, and really the lifeline of health. I found for myself and for patients, when you can feel connection to yourself and to others, that can really get you through many challenging situations. I'm curious about your work with healthcare systems and how you see what you're doing as almost bringing health to healthcare. And that's one of the passion projects I have, working with coaches at the institutional level. And I wonder how you see the way you've been able to marry your past experience through medicine and training with your entrepreneurship and in the healthcare system right now.
Great question. So I've actually, since I retired from medicine, but I really never really wanted to walk away from medicine completely. So that's one of the reasons why I got into healthcare IT consulting, because it would just give me another channel from which I could utilize my background and my experience, so that, all of that education didn't go to waste. So I'm really passionate about technology, and the way it is so a lot of hospitals are already transitioned from paper charting into the electronic medical record era. So that's introduced a lot of streamlining and a lot of efficiencies in terms of documentation and ordering and billing, but it's also introduced a lot of inefficiencies as well. So a lot of, the electronic health records, separated physicians from patient care. It's introduced a lot of extraneous administrative clerical time for physicians. So it has its good and bad. So as with all technology, there's good and bad. So you have to look at both. And with time, these issues get resolved or mitigated, and new issues arise. So that's how with technology, that's how it usually progresses, and that's innovation. So then the next phase is with electronic health records is, once we've already in the information age. So now we're in the age of automation and artificial intelligence. So a lot of the next question is, what are these hospitals and insurance companies and regulatory agencies going to do with all of this patient data? So, there's a lot of information and data for patient diagnosis, prognosis, treatment, for current existing diseases as well as new ones as well. So, and that's how I combine my medical degree, my background in research and technology, as well as my consulting experience, as well as my love for technology. So I think it's a great field because it's allowed me to marry all of my skills and passions into these projects.
Yeah, and I think it's so encouraging to hear that there's somebody who has experience, who is advocating for physicians and patients in that space. How do we make these electronic health records work for us and not against us, and acknowledging that both are happening. Addressing and recognizing obstacles and celebrating successes is so important. So to be able to do both of those is really encouraging. Well, there's been so much great information here. And I think ways for our listeners to see that they have a space, right, to be creative, to set goals, different ways they can structure their lives to optimize their function, and that there really is incorporation of body, mind, spirit into financial health. I think that's so great. And I thank you for being here. As my wrap-up question, I wonder, and this can be broad, this is open to any interpretation, how do you see yourself for the health of all things?
I'm really advocating towards a more of a holistic and more of a preventative approach, because I've seen medicine where the traditional model was you prescribe more treatments, medications, diagnosis, imaging. Doctors got compensated based on procedures and number of patients, but now it's changing now because the current model system of healthcare, we've seen both the good and the bad. So I think right now, as we progress into the future, the idea is going to be more about prevention. It's going to be about more wellness and wholeness, and just in terms of whether that's just in terms of entire physician well-being. So the physician as a whole, not just one aspect, but just as the entire picture. So that's financial, spiritual, emotional, physical as well. So, and I think all of these, with COVID-19 and this year, I think it's really brought to light and has actually accelerated a lot of the changes that need to be made. So I think I think our medical profession, if we really embrace these times and move forward and start to bring these issues into awareness, will do much better.
I think that's so fascinating and important. I thank you for doing the work that you are. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, how would they best reach you, and what are some other key information you might have available?
So I have my YouTube channel. You can just go onto YouTube and type in Christopher H. Liu, MD, PhD, and there's just all my podcast interviews, all my personal videos as well. And go ahead and subscribe. I'm also very active on Instagram. I built my channel during the pandemic from 200 followers, and now it's almost 1,600. So I'm consistently posting, and I'm really active on Instagram. So you just my handle is at Dr. Chris Liu, MD, PhD. I'm active on Facebook, Twitter. You can email me at Christopher Liu, MD, PhD. And and I also have a link tree where it's just one single link, and you can see all my different books. I'm also on Amazon, so you can type in my name and you can find my 4 books there as well.
Excellent. We'll put all those details in the show notes. I thank you so much for your time and for your good work. And I'm happy to know that you're advocating for physicians in all ways for the health of all things.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I enjoyed in this conversation.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of This Osteopathic Life, Conversations for the Health of All Things. Please take a moment to rate, and review the podcast. And if you would like to be featured as a guest, or know someone who you'd like to nominate as a guest for an episode, please let me know at thisosteopathiclife@gmail.com. Visit the website at thisosteopathiclife.com, or visit me on Instagram and Facebook at This Osteopathic Life. Thank you so much for listening.